Okay, so the next word, word in the glossary is moat. Moat, M-O-A-T, the moat. The moat refers to the existential distance, a kind of infinite distance that our false selves place between us to the degree that we each enact an outer self that is not who we really are in our being. The moat is therefore a metaphor for the lived distance between our unconscious because unrecognized co-presence as social beings and our terrain of conscious because recognized enacted social connection. So I'll stop there and add, if I'm talking to you like, oh, good to see you, Brenden. Been a long time. Through the medium of a role like that, when we can see it in that example as being very obvious, my gestures are a bit delayed. When I'm communicating with you that way, there's actually a space between us that renders invisible the co-presence that we are to each other. And this outer self is placed between us, to which you have to try to respond to. So this outer self creates a space of alienation or distance that I call the moat. And the moat is the ordinary, painful absence of actual co-present connection that's created through the medium of the false self, through the medium of the performative self that I was just doing, and I'm doing again. I mean, it's part of our conditioning. So listen to the next sentence. The moat is always being crossed by the desire for mutual recognition that seeks to surpass its distance. So we're always trying from our unconscious to cross the moat and really connect with the other. It's always being crossed and reestablished by the false self seeking to monitor and secure its boundary as a condition of social membership. In other words, when we are born, we are, let's say, fully present initially. And then we become conditioned that if we want to be included in society, we must become the way we are seen. That's what it means. That's why how we are recognized becomes who we are in our outer self, in our conditioned self. And the space between that and who we really are, our deepest presence to ourselves and others, always transcends that and is trying to cross that, can't help itself, it's trying to cross that boundary to true connection with the other. But because we've been taught, because it's been a part of what has led to our acceptance at all, is the way we are recognized, we must become the way we are recognized. We therefore keep reestablishing that false self to protect ourselves from what I earlier described in the glossary as humiliation, ontological humiliation. We fear that if we reveal who we really are, it won't be affirmed through mutual recognition, because the way we've been recognized is as who we are not in this persona, okay? This performative self that we have stuck on us kind of thing. And so, and then the last sentence of the moat in the glossary is, to the extent that social movements succeed in rising they dissolve the moat. What it really means to say is that the social movement rose up is that there's a ricochet of mutual recognition in a space in the culture. Maybe it's the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender upsurge, or a civil rights movement, or any number of other life-creating social movements where we become empowered, and in that rising, we cross the moat and come into connection with each other. It's an amazing experience of the dissolution of what separates us. And so I'll take this, I don't know when people will be listening to this, could be centuries from now, but this summer there were protests against the killing of an African-American man named George Floyd. And hundreds of thousands of people came out into the street. Now this was a partial social movement created by a single terrible televised event that everybody saw, the killing of George Floyd, when a police officer kneeled on his neck in a particularly brutal and dead way. And people emerged out, and you could experience for a week or two a part of what I'm talking about, in which people were meeting in the park, tens of thousands of people met in Dolores Park here in San Francisco. I mean, tens of thousands of people went on the march that came out at Dolores Park. And suddenly, we were all, in a way, we were all expressing in the protest a rejection of everything in the world that led to that death. The hardness and emotional deadness of the officer, the brutality of the innocent person, the culture that would produce that, that's only one feature of something wrong with the entire culture that we are talking about in this book. And so we all rose up together in opposition to that, came out of our little homes here, even with the pandemic having started, and emerged into each other's space in a way that crossed the moat, is what I'm saying. It crossed the moat somewhat, not like a full social movement that's sustained over a period of months where there's more of a base over time to the community that's created out of the movement. Then you're more really crossing the moat. Then you might go live in a commune or just drop out of the system that we are otherwise attached to, deeply attached to, as the medium of our social connection to others. If we build another social connection out of the movement's force, and we feel it inside us, creating a new ground inside us, then as we cross the moat and connect with each other, we can let go of the wider system and culture all the more easily. The women's movement one part of the women's movement started with consciousness raising groups, people tentatively meeting in each other's living rooms, talking about the condition of women in traditional marriages, in the workplace, and then gradually the women's movement expressed a transformative energy that changed the entire culture, and actually is changing the entire world culture over a period of time. Why is that happening? Because there's a new recognition coming out of that rising force of a more human, more authentic, more true way of encountering each other, and of dissolving these traditional hierarchies and role placements within which people felt fake and forced to be fake and never able to realize themselves. So it meant something for women, but it meant something for the particularity of what it meant to women carried something universal that it meant to all of us. Just as protesting George Floyd's murder, it was a protest against everything in the system that produced it. So the women's movement protesting the condition of women was a protest against the entire world within which this kind of hierarchy could be created, dividing human beings by gender. So crossing the moat, social movements tend to enable and express a crossing of the moat. And the moat is a manifestation of our separation. That distance that in medieval times the moat surrounded the castle, now we have moats surrounding ourselves and each other that keep us like that.